This is a Vsauce video. I've never watched a Vsauce video. He has 22.8 million subscribers. I've never watched a Vsauce video. This one was put onto the subreddit. It's called Illusions of Time. Here's another video called Do Chairs Exist? And I'm already thinking, why haven't I watched a Vsauce video before?
Hey Vsauce, Michael here. When something becomes part of the past, can it ever truly be experienced again? Obviously, my beard will grow back, but it won't be the same beard and it won't be on the same person. It will be...
But why am I watching this at 25 past 11? I'm not going to be able to sleep, I can tell. I can tell.
On a slightly older, different Michael. But of course, the bearded Michael of the past isn't completely gone. No, he still exists in our minds as a memory, and in the form of records of the past, like images and video. Hi, I'm the slightly older, different Michael you heard about.
I can tell. Some of it's social proof because he's got 22 million subscribers and God knows how many views this video's got. It has 18 million views. So there's a social proof element that this is clearly good because it just clearly is. But 40 seconds in, some things are so good that I can't deal with it. It's almost like there's another part of me that is just berating myself for not having made it. Yet there is no version of me that could ever make something like this. So thankfully, it's so far out of my wheelhouse that it's not stressing me out too much. When it's something closer to my wheelhouse, the worst is when somebody else wrote a really good video game review, somebody else did a really good YouTube video that's in my space. I'm just mad. It just stresses me, dude. Anyway, I can already tell how good this is.
I am 130 days older than that guy. Wow, 130 days. You know, it really doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Just as an optical illusion is a distortion of our sense of sight, a temporal illusion is a distortion of our sense of time. Some seem small, like how a minute spent waiting in line can seem to take forever.
Yeah.
But an entire day with friends can just fly by. Some seem...
As I've got older, I've been thinking about this a lot because it's fucking crazy when you get to my age. It is crazy. You think it's like, days go much slower when you're a kid, and then when you're an adult, they go faster. Unfortunately, just seems to keep ramping up the speed. My boy's probably going to explain now.
Deeper, like the uncanny feeling we get from recordings that make people from long ago seem more real than usual. Or the strange way time seems to sneak by. For example, the songs I liked as a kid, Wannabe, Mbop, Semi-Charmed Life, are as old to kids born today as the literal oldies were when I was born.
Yeah.
How can that be true? Am I really that
How am I 4 years older than you? Kill me.
old now? I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. I know how time works, but yet I don't. Far from being just mistakes, these illusions are the edges of another dimension of space-time. Not one given to us by physics, not one given at all, but one made by our minds. Let's begin with the different ways there are to feel time. Actually sitting down and consciously tuning into the passage of time as it happens is called feeling time prospectively. You can't do that to time that's already happened, except you can. If I were to
It's stressing me out. It's just stressing me out. When something is this good, it just stresses me out.
ask you, without looking, to guess how long you have been watching this video, you'd probably be able to come up with a guess you were reasonably confident in. Well, you arrived at that guess by feeling time retrospectively, by measuring it as it appears in your memory. Now, with that in mind, we are ready to approach our first illusion, the holiday paradox.
Talk to me,
mate. A 4-hour delay at the airport before your holiday can feel unbearably long while it's happening. But once you arrive, an exciting day at your destination can seem to fly by. Those feelings are all prospective timing.
Right.
A week later, retrospectively, the delay often feels like a blip in your mind.
Yes. Of course it does. Of course it feels like a blip. Yeah. Oh, you motherfucker. No, it's stressing me out because this is something that I think about all the time, no pun intended. So whoever posted this in the Reddits, well done, but also fuck you. It's stressing me out because it's something I think about all the time. So getting some answers is fucking great. But also, oh man, what I just need to do better. Everything I need to do needs to be better.
Like a much longer, bigger part of your life. These are the long-short and short-long patterns of felt time.
Got it.
Which one you feel depends on whether what you are doing is empty or full. An empty activity is monotonous, unstimulating, unimportant to you, whereas a full activity is packed with sensations, novelty, significance, context change, and challenge. Now, I experienced this during my 3 days in isolation. While I was there, time dragged very, very slowly.
A fear I have right now is that it's just Friday, and that there's still a lot of time left.
But now, years later, it's hard to believe that I spent 3 full days in that room.
They feel like a blip.
Seems like something I barely did.
Fuck.
Well, it's believed that prospective time feels fast when an activity is full because you're not busy thinking about time. If you're not attending to it, you're busy with something else, well, you won't notice how much time has passed.
Mm-hmm.
But to understand retrospective illusions, let's ask a different question. Does time speed up as we get older? Many of you may
guy's
feel
fucking
the
up my
same
head.
way. Looking back, my childhood feels like it lasted so long, but my 20s went by faster, and my 30s are going by even faster than that.
Yes. Yeah,
A
as I said,
popular explanation
40s.
is the proportion theory. It suggests that time seems to speed up as we age because each new unit of time that we live is smaller relative to all the time that came before.
This is what I figured it out as. I'll just bring it.
The year.
Yeah, that's it. The amount of total time that you've been alive is longer, so each unit feels smaller because it is relative to the amount of time that you've been alive. That was my theory.
You lived as a 9-year-old was 10% of your entire existence up to that point. But when you're 30, another year is just 3% more life. Studies have found little evidence that weeks, months, or even years are retrospectively remembered as passing faster by those who are older. But decades? Yes.
Ooh.
And while it's true that the older we get, the faster we tend to think the last 10 years went by, that only appears to be the case until about the age of 50. After that, the speed of decades appears to plateau.
Okay, that's good
A
to know.
explanation is that how long a duration feels depends on how many things in it can be recalled. In my normal life, lots of different things happen every 3 days. But during the 3 days I was in isolation, so little happened that I have few distinct memories from it. My mind sees that emptiness and perceives that...
So crazy, because I spend so much time... I'm not in isolation, and I live in a house with people. But I do spend a hell of a lot of time in this room not talking to anybody most days for large periods of the day, and I'm talking to a lens. And now I like doing the streams because it does feel like I'm actually talking to people in a way that it doesn't. But I have since I've started doing this specifically, especially kind of since COVID, and I've stopped like traveling for work, and I don't work for Monster anymore, and don't do Rock Reacts. I was traveling up to do that, just here. My perception of time is so fucked because I just feel like I live the same day over and over and over and over again. Now, thankfully, it's sprinkled in with chaos of family and kids and things. And I do get out of the house most days and train jiu-jitsu, which is also going to a room that's the same place and doing the same thing over and over again. But, I felt this crazily over the last 4 years. I've to the point where I'm having to really try and force myself to do things so I remember them, which is weird.
It was brief. So, perhaps a decline in
what did he say?
distinct memories from it. My mind sees that emptiness and perceives that it was brief. So, perhaps a decline in new experiences and rapid novelty as we age means fewer events our brains decide to commit to memory. So then, looking back, because there are fewer distinct memories from more recent decades, we assume they were shorter. Reflecting on all of this, it's striking just how many moments are forgettable. John Koenig, the author of the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, calls the awareness of how few days are memorable oleka. Over time, our specific daily perceptions of what happened conglomerate into generalized ideas about
we're
how
only 6 minutes into this. This is fucking up my head. This is fucking up my head, man. I can deal with it because I do spend an awful lot of time thinking about this sort of stuff.
things were. Themes, moods, the big picture. What was perceptual becomes conceptual. And concepts are good. They lower cognitive load by wringing out details, leaving us with the broader, lighter gist. But they can also obscure reality, which brings us to our second distortion, chronological illusions. Distinct entities. It's a continuity of fuzzy, overlapping blobs, and we impose concepts on it. For example, is a hot dog a sandwich? Is cereal soup? How many holes does a straw have? Those aren't questions about reality, they're questions about words we made up. Periodization is the chopping up of time into contrived pieces like the Stone Age, the Renaissance, the 80s, the 90s. But here's the thing. When did the 80s or 90s really
This fucker keeps changing his jumper as well.
happen? I mean, mathematically, they refer to years
Dude, I'm just going to be lying in bed, like, just fucking spinning out. Spinning out after this video. God damn it. I should have just played Space Marine.
that have 8s or 9s in the 10s place.
Sorry,
But
what?
here's the thing. When did the 80s or 90s really happen? I mean, mathematically, they refer to years that have 8s or 9s in the 10s place. But conceptually? Well, it's not like on January 1st, 1980, people woke up and were like, whoa, 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 guys, it's the 80s, quick,
yeah.
everyone, change your clothes.
For sure.
Concepts say too much and too little. Facts that expose their imperfections are perennial favorites on social media. I made an entire video about them, in fact. But what hasn't been discussed
What I'm seeing a lot at the moment, and judging by the general age of my audience, some of you will be feeling this right now, is that you're going through what I went through about 10 years ago, where you're suddenly seeing footballers that you grew up watching are becoming managers, or a film that you really love is 10 years old, or an album that you really love is 10 years old, and it's fucking making you extremely aware of the process of aging. I remember going through that feeling about probably, 10 plus years ago now, and now it's just normal. Now it's just a normal feeling as you get even older than that.
yet is the mechanisms by which we allow them to do their dirty work. Let's dig in and see what we can find. If I asked you to lay down on the floor of a windowless, clockless room and get up after you thought a minute had passed, you'd probably do a pretty good job. But if I asked you to get up after you thought 10 years had passed, that'd be hard. We lack an ability to sense and grasp long periods of time. Also, we can't remember everything that happens. So instead of comprehending history's correct scale and structure, I believe that our minds often just use how we think about past events to place them relative to each other in time. One way we do this is through what I call the conceptual comparison heuristic, a technique whereby we use the similarity of elements in our conceptions of things to judge their temporal distance.
All right, mate.
If our
Yeah, I
concepts
needed a
of
visual
two
example. Okay.
things suggest wildly different times, it's natural to assume that a lot of things happened between them. And if a lot happened, the duration separating them must be large. Alternatively, if our concepts aren't too different, the time between them must be bare of events, and so it feels brief. It's not a bad strategy, but tyrannosaurs died out 66 million years ago, and when T-Rexes began roaming the Earth, stegosaurs had already been extinct for more than 80 million years. To a T-Rex,
I'm going to go and lie on the floor for 10 years.
Stegosaurus was even more ancient than we think T-Rexes are. Here's another example. When we think of Marilyn Monroe, we think of a young woman, old Hollywood, mid-century glamour, Americana, black and white. When we think of the Queen of England, we think of an old woman in color in England and
Not
news
anymore, but yeah,
headlines.
rest in peace.
Because those conceptions are quite different, we mentally place each woman in a different time. So it can come as a surprise to learn that they were both born in the same year.
Yeah.
Similarly, it can be surprising to learn
I know exactly what you're saying, but that one was a bit weird because I think maybe in England we kind of have images of a younger queen as well. But I know what you're saying.
that Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were also born in the same year. And if they were alive today, they would both be younger than the Queen of England.
This one isn't
When
spinning me
Harriet
out.
Tubman was born, Thomas Jefferson was alive. And when she died, Ronald Reagan was alive. This is surprising to many of us because our concepts of these people are anchored to them as adults. But Harriet Tubman was a 4-year-old when Thomas Jefferson died, and when she died, Ronald Reagan was a 2-year-old. Far
Right.
from just being amusing, chronological illusions can often have teeth. America can feel like an idea fixed long before any of us by the overwhelming bulk of events that came before. But Barbara Walters has been alive for more than a third of America's entire history. And if you were 25, you have already lived through and been a part of more than 10% of America's history. Chronological illusions may also be caused by what I call the construal level heuristic, a technique whereby we place things in time based on whether we construe them concretely or abstractly.
Right, here we go.
In
here
social
we go. Here we go.
psychology, construal level theory describes how abstract and
Listen, the just from a YouTube editing point of view, it's fucking brilliant. I mean, storytelling, pattern interrupts, open, close loops, then a new open, just a masterclass. A masterclass. None of this would matter if the idea and presentation weren't incredible. That's actually all that really matters. But at the same time, yeah, a masterclass. Would you got all of that? How do you package it? You package it like this. Even just the way it keeps popping up into frame. All that stuff about the people in the different ages. I think I've thought about that so much. I've come to terms with it. So that one didn't spin me out. But I reckon.
concrete thinking relate to
I reckon this one will.
describes how abstract and concrete thinking relate to psychological distance. That is, how distant something seems as opposed to how distant it actually is. Now, unsurprisingly, it's been found that people tend to think about things that are psychologically distant more abstractly. But studies have also found that if people are asked to think about an event abstractly, they'll consider it more distant than if asked to construe it concretely.
Interesting.
This may explain why things can turn out to be longer ago or more recent than we thought. If an event recedes especially quickly from relevance or is suddenly replaced in our daily thoughts by other more urgent events unconnected to it, our minds may shift its construal to a higher level, making it feel further back in time than it really is. Conversely,
Yes.
if attending to the low-level details of an event continues to be important, our construal-level heuristic will make it feel closer in time than it really
Interesting.
is. Our third illusion of time comes from
Interesting.
the fact that
I've never thought
time
about that one
is
before.
always moving forward.
Yeah.
Because of that, the psychological distances we feel towards things should also always be changing. But not all of them do. The belief that your place in time is stable is what I call the chronostatic illusion. Tim Urban pointed out that it is now the case that Jurassic Park, Forrest Gump, The Lion King were all released closer to the moon landing than today. As a person who remembers The Lion King being brand new and remembers feeling at that time that the moon landing was old, this is all very weird. The Lion King seems so much more recent than the moon landing ever did to me. The conceptual comparison heuristic places them far apart.
We've also got, on top of it, he may go on to talk about this, because he talked about records. But we've also got the strange thing in our history whereby there's black and white. So think of all of human history. He may go on to talk about this. Think of all of human history before black and white, before photography, right? So 1800s, sometime whenever photography was invented. All the way back forever. All of human history was all in colour or, drawings or whatever, but it was all in colour. Then there's this brief snapshot of time from the invention of the photograph to the modern era of color. So and then a brief period where there was both. So obviously there was color in like the 20s and 30s, but there was still black and white. Like we had a black and white TV when I was very, very, very young, when I was like 3 years old. So you have this strange thing where a lot of footage from around the moon landing times in the 60s and stuff is black and white, even though there may be colorized versions of it. And that makes things feel ancient to us. Yet just fast forward another decade, and basically at that point everything's in color. Now you have the strange thing where throughout the decades from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s up until the early 2000s, where you could kind of judge something's age based on the resolution of the footage, the color quality, the stock of it, the saturation, all these things from the 70s look a certain way. You got that kind of VHS, SVHS look from the 80s. You got that kind of grainy jackass look from the 90s. Then as you get into you know what I mean? You have those different ages that were done by the format. And then in the HD era, when that came in like 2005, pretty much from then up until now, everything kind of looks the same. Once 1080 came in, 720, 1080, obviously quality has improved slightly now, but then again, you might be filming on an incredible camera or on a phone. So it's kind of paused, but there is this weird, I think about this a lot, there is this weird period in time. So all of human history, all color, all memories, no records. Then this brief period, very, very, very brief period of black and white, where things just feel ancient. And then that's gone. So it's just this snapshot.
My concept of the 90s will probably always stray from my concept of the present a little less than it should, because the 90s and now have something in common that the 90s and the 60s never did or will. Me.
Yeah, because you're
Also,
alive, yeah.
My construal level of The Lion King may resist becoming abstract, because The Lion King continues to evolve and happen. The mechanisms I use to place things in time have sunk hooks into The Lion King, creating a sort of chronostatic cling that fools me into believing it's more near. The music that was new when I was young has also been tethered in my mind to the idea of new stuff only us kids get, even as it has actually been drifting away, as far away as the stuff I used to think was far. A chronostatic illusion is spectacularly broken when you realize that you have become as old as your parents were when you were born. It doesn't always seem quite right. They came first, and as such,
Way
should
older.
always be older. But suddenly, you're aware of a way in which they aren't.
I'm way older now.
Your age gap
Mine
with
was
people
25
in the
when I was
past
born.
is not static. Your parents keep getting older, right along with you, but the people
Why are
they
you trying to fuck people
don't-
up with the music? I've come to terms with all of this one, so I'm fine with this. But someone would have never have thought about that, who have just hit, or either just about to or have just hit the same age as the parents were when you were born, and they just put this music on to fuck you up.
don't. This can lead to empathetic realizations. They weren't any wiser or more folded into the world then than you are now. Considering the temporal perspectives of other people leads us to a fourth distortion, the chronocentric illusion. The belief that our own relationship to time is the best or only frame of reference, or that it's more important
Oh
and
man,
more
do you
real.
want to hear something crazy? I have just had a dread feeling. So my eldest son, is closer in age to the age my mum was when I was born than I currently am to the age my mum was when I was born. In fact, both my sons, one's the same and one's closer. That's fucked up. Well, there we go. So I dealt with the other one, but I hadn't dealt with that.
Of reference, or that it's more important and more real than any other. My grandparents used to tell me about how when they were kids, they didn't have television. And I always thought that sounded so weird. I mean, obviously, I knew it was true, but like, what the heck did they do with their free time? It wasn't relatable at all. People back then must have been so different, not real in the same way I was. But I remember a time before the internet,
Yes.
before mobile phones, and it
Yes.
wasn't that weird. The internet and cell phones are still, in my mind, an additional thing we now have. But for my daughter, they will be what we've always had. And when I tell her about a time when no one had the internet and didn't even know they needed it, it will likely sound to her just like the old stories.
It does. I assume your
heard
daughter's
about
young. It
growing up
does.
with no
Yeah,
TV.
it does to my kids.
And that's
They
bizarre.
They can't wrap their head around it at all.
My childhood was weird. It was the olden days. Mine was totally normal. Protagonist syndrome is the belief that you are the main character of the universe. Recognizing that you aren't is what John Koenig famously called Sonder, the realization that other people, like that stranger over there you will never see again, have full lives, just as important and consuming to them as
It's really
yours
interesting.
is.
You see, I don't know if it's happening right now, but a couple of years ago, you started seeing a trend on short form content of people looking at, like, they'd be in an airport or something and they'd be filming other people and calling them NPCs, but like they're real people and they're having some sort of existential crisis about it. That's what this is.
To you. I'd like to add to protagonist syndrome the concept of ab ovo syndrome. Ab ovo means from the egg, from the very beginning. In literature, it describes a story that begins at the start, ab ovo, as opposed to in the middle, in medias res. Ab ovo syndrome is the belief that the movie of the universe began when you began, that the times of your life are the plot and contain the climax, and that everything before you was just backstory, everything after merely sequels. When you realize that that's not true, that you were not born ab ovo, but in medias res, that you'll die before the credits, and that everyone who has ever lived was a fully fleshed out protagonist in their own minds, that feeling is what I call chronosonder. Sonder not just for people over there, but for people over then. Overcoming the chronocentric illusion isn't always easy. It doesn't help that people from the past are finished. Unlike us who still have choices to make, they tell the same story over and over again. They're also separated by barriers made of their own evidence. The world wasn't actually black and white in the past, and it didn't suddenly become vertical in the present. Obviously, we all know that. But the arbitrary...
The horizontal landscape portrait thing is interesting as well. I didn't mention that one when I was talking about the black and white one. He's just gone over it very quickly there. But, yeah, of course. Now, people are perceiving... It's going to be interesting, actually, because, you know, my kids play their games and watch YouTube like this, but also my eldest, who now has a phone, is spending a lot of time watching vertical videos. So I'm not sure this existential crisis is what I need before bed. Maybe it is. Maybe it is what you needed before bed. What you guys reckon Vsauce thinks about a 10 to 12? This. This is exactly this.
Properties of a Times recording media can influence our perception of the past nonetheless. If silent films didn't look so much different from what could be done just a few decades later, would it be nearly as surprising to learn that Charlie Chaplin lived long enough to watch Star Wars? When I was in high school, I saw 2001's Pipe Dream for the first time, and it blew my mind. My friends and I honestly believed that it was a real thing someone had built. But recently, I looked it up on YouTube, and I was like, this is computer animation. What the heck was wrong with us? And what do you know? The top comment was exactly that sentiment. Our perception of the past
I forgot about
is
that fucking
constantly
thing.
evolving as technology does. And that's significant. We don't just think about the past. We also think about the past. The material properties of an artifact can influence our relationship with what came before and push it further away. Faded yellowy color.
Here we go. Yeah, he's talking about. I figured that he'd talk about this as well. My boy.
Properties of an artifact can influence our relationship with what came before and push it further away. Faded yellowy color, sepia, SD pixelated video.
Yeah.
Technological features can make the past seem like it was never as real as the present.
Yes.
But
completely.
Some kinds of evidence collapse that chronocentric divide. One way they can do it right now is by being demotic, ordinary, personal, candid. Such recordings are much more similar to the media we exchange with each other right now in the present. This footage of people goofing around in a 7-Eleven in 1987 has more than 6 million views, not just because of nostalgia, but because it's like visiting past people in their natural habitat.
Yeah, I
at
love shit
time
like
zone.
this.
This
It's
isn't
fucking
some
mad.
pageant with timeless ambitions. It's a view out the window of a time machine they don't know is there. Another way
what
evidence
bars! It's the view out the window of a time machine they do not know is there. Bars, dude.
corrode chronocentric illusions is by containing a convention more normal than we expect. People in old photos look like serious robots because back then you had to stay in the same pose for a long time to get a picture taken. But also, a long-standing trope in the world of images up to that point was that smiling or looking goofy wasn't a sign of happiness, but of drunkenness or stupidity. But every so often, this image pops up online, and people vehemently debate whether it's actually old or not. Sure,
Yeah,
it's
that's
black
funny.
and white, but the expression seems too normal
More-
to really
yeah,
be
modern,
on a person
right?
from the past.
It
It
does.
is, however, actually an honest-to-gosh picture taken in the early 1900s.
Mm.
One of the earliest known photographs of a human smiling, in fact.
That's crazy.
Juxtaposition of an expression someone
Cameras still
today
blow my mind. The fact that we can capture moments in time and record them is crazy to me. Yep. Definitely think about that a lot. Really is. Especially now, it's just like you can just snapshot the light that existed for that moment in time at that angle and just store it forever inside this box. And at any time, you can just turn this and do that at any point is fucking insane, right? I mean, it's so insane. Just that moment of light at those angles reflected off those surfaces at that time. And if you're doing video, those sound waves bouncing, going through the air. And you can just capture it in this little flat box and keep it forever. When I was a kid, really young, I could not understand. We were watching a show called Ski. I think it still exists. Ski Sunday. Has a banging intro theme, by the way. My stepdad used to like watching it. It was on a Sunday. It was about skiing. And I just remember distinctly, it's one of my earliest memories. It was probably about 3 or 4. I could not understand how there were skiing people inside the TV. Now, I'd watched TV before that and after. So God knows if I've been thinking about that the whole time. But I distinctly remember asking my stepdad, explaining, God knows what his answer was. But I think it was something technical about how there's people filming it. But, you know, again, he's still in his 20s and he probably didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But I could not understand the answer. And I was incredibly frustrated in my mind at the time. And I think I've been like that since. Like, I like to know how things work. And when I don't, I have to just completely ignore it and not think about it too much or know everything. I have to know everything. And then I'm okay.
might make, with a medium that suggests a technology of the past creates an opportunity for chronosonder. The subject is both dead and undead, gone, but not as unrelatably far as we may have thought the past was. Finally, the chronocentric divide can fade when we find the past captured in a
Bro's
medium
dinner looks
that
shit,
was
by the
rare
way.
at the time
Just a
but
bowl
more
of plain
common
rice.
now. This is footage taken by an early HD camera of New York City in 1993. It's pretty cool, but there's something almost uncanny about it. Watching it isn't exactly like time traveling back to 1993, but it looks more like video taken today than many of us expect. It's like
Yeah, this is
peering
wild.
through a
This is
telescope.
kind of what I was talking about
They
before,
can
but I didn't realize there was cameras capable of this in 1993.
see them, but they can't see us. They appear closer, more actual than usual. We lean in to get grasps of what it was like. That's part of the allure of time travel. As L.P. Hartley said, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. But it hasn't always been that way. Time travel wasn't a common feature of fiction until the 19th century. Not because people hadn't thought of it before, they had, but the past and future weren't rich with interesting destinations in the same way they are to us now.
Right.
In the year 1008, it wasn't an insult to call someone 1000 and late. 1,000 years ago, the culture and technology around you was unlikely to be foreign to your parents, or grandparents, or great-grandparents. And outside of an act of God or gods, you didn't expect them to be foreign to your children or their children either. 1,000 years ago, there were no...
This is something that I've been thinking about before. I think one of the reasons that we don't respect our elders very much in this time is because there's a technological disconnect between generations in a way that's really, really... Well, I can't think of a better word to describe it. It really does disconnect. You know, you think about people who are 20 years older than me and how little they understand how everything works. And I've done as good a job as possible in trying to keep up myself as I get into my 40s. But a lot of people my age don't, like I said, have absolutely no idea who most of the artists that I talk about are, have no idea about anyone on YouTube, don't know about any of that sort of stuff, and haven't known about any of that sort of stuff for 10 years at this point. So there is like a sort of technological, social, and media-based disconnect between the generations, and because the older generations, like old people, are so genuinely fucking useless when it comes to young people technology, they just basically have made themselves seem useless, when in actual fact, you know, people who are still with it, like into their 60s and stuff, maybe when they're super old and they kind of lost their marbles a little bit and stuff, that's a problem. But people, you know, these people in their 60s is just unbelievable fountains of wisdom that we don't use. We don't take any of their knowledge because they don't understand how fucking TikTok works. And it's like, well, you know, they don't need to know how fucking TikTok works. But they've lived 60 years. They know shitloads about human interaction, about life, about, you can learn about their past. Like, I wish my grandma was still alive, who was around, you know, she was around during the war, and I could ask her about that now, and she's passed away a long time ago. But I do think there's something in that, because it does seem in other cultures and in the past that elders were given a lot more respect. Kids now will hold a flat palm to their ear to act out being on the phone now, rather than pinky and thumb that we used to. My son, he uses the phone like that they do in The Apprentice. He doesn't hold it up like that. He only knows it like that. And do you know what's interesting? He will phone me and I'll be like, hello? And his response is, hello? And I'm like, hello? And he's like, hello? And I was like, what the hell's going on? Is his phone broken? And I thought this was so long. And then I realised that when his friends phone him, they don't say hello. They'll be like, yeah, Elliot, what's up? Like, because they know who it is and they know what's happening. But we're so conditioned from using the phone in the way that we were, especially, I'm older than you lot, but we were all using the phone before mobile phones, especially ones like these, that this is how you answer the phone. You pick it up and you say hello. And they're like, they were never conditioned to have to do that because they've never used a landline. They've never seen a landline. I haven't had a landline in this house the whole time that my son, who's now 13, has been alive. So he's learned using the phone over the last year or so, 2 years that he's had it, just on mobile. And so they've learned a completely different way, and a much, actually, more correct way of using this modern technology that's not been changed by how we're conditioned. How strange is that? Kids these days could never type on a Nokia, no, but we were fucking rapid on those things.
Interestingly different. Pre-modern societies viewed the present as a continuation of the past. Changes were interpreted as temporary disturbances of the natural state.
That is fascinating.
But today, we see the present as something special. Change is significant enough and rapid enough now that we would imagine ourselves quite differently had we been born 10 years earlier or later.
Yeah, we're just talking about it there, right?
Sarah Schiffman points out, we fail to realize that people before the 18th century did not see themselves this way. Instead of having a history, they regarded themselves as having an unchanging nature or essence, whose full realization might be impeded or impelled, but not otherwise shaped by events. Nostalgia existed, but for moments and places gone simply because they were prior to or away from here and now, not because they were fundamentally different and categorically irretrievable. As the discovery of antiquities and new worlds and new species accelerated, as the invention of new technologies and new ways of recording accelerated, the present became less and less like the past. Reinhard Koselleck has argued that
dude, that's
1750
fascinating.
and
Fucking guy, honestly. It's fascinating. It's like I've never been able to connect those ideas properly in my mind before. They've been there. You can tell that I've been thinking about a lot of this stuff anyway, The stuff in the middle about the time, the distances, and how this that felt way. I've thought about that so much that I'm on board with it. But yeah, he's fucking. The way he describes this stuff is absolutely amazing. It really is. I mean, who the fuck is this guy? I don't know who. I mean, I know Vsauce. I'd heard the name before. This is the first one of his videos I've ever watched for some reason. Just is. Clearly somebody that I need to watch pretty much all of his videos. But like, is he a scientist? Who is he? Just a YouTuber? Like, who is he?
In 1850, the acceleration of history reached a speed at which static or cyclical views of time had to be replaced with our modern view, which understands the past to be essentially different from the present. It used to be that things passed. Now, there is a past. As technological and social change accelerate, the window of time within which things can be trusted to remain stable shrinks. In such a world, to stand still is scary. Hartmut Rosa observed, the pre-modern experience of being excluded is replaced in modernity by the constantly present, fear-inducing possibility of becoming excluded, in the sense of getting left behind. Things change faster, and we keep keeping up because we are afraid to die. Whoever lives twice as fast can realize twice as many worldly possibilities, and thus, as it were, live 2 lives in the span of 1. Whoever becomes infinitely...
That reminded me, I don't know if you've ever seen that fucking Grindset video where the guy talks about having 3 days for every single day. He's like, my first day is from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then my second day is from 12 p.m. to 6... I don't know if you've seen that fucking video. Absolutely hilarious.
Fast no longer needs to fear death, the annihilator of options. Acceleration becomes a secular substitute for eternity.
Acceleration?
Salvation,
Acceleration becomes a secular substitute. No, is that what he said? Substitute or conduit?
Acceleration becomes a secular substitute for eternity.
That's mad. Acceleration becomes a secular substitute for eternity. So there is no a secular substitute. So there is no heaven. There is no afterlife. There is no eternity in that way of thinking. So in order to get as much as much earthly possibility in, you accelerate your actions. That's fucking mad. I've never thought about that before.
To achieve this salvation, we try to make things faster and easier to save time. But one of the greatest hoodwinks we ever pulled on ourselves was not noticing that the things we do to save time leave us with less of it and more alone in it. No technological change is only technological. The car allowed people to travel more quickly and whenever they wanted, but once available, it meant people could live further from where they worked. So cities and towns changed, personal associations changed, roads divided neighborhoods, created new opportunities, while ending others. Jobs and industries and cultural forms of expression and a whole different society sprang into existence simply because we found a way to move faster. Likewise, smartphones and the internet made information access and communication easier and faster, but that's not all they did. Along with them came new social conventions, new communities, new levels of exposure to ideas and conflict, a new understanding of what it meant to be available. That's a lot to have to adapt to. They even redefined what now is made of. Digital spaces are filled with not just what's being said, but also what has been said. And it's all right there, not tucked into a library across town or on a tiny plaque on a statue.
I see what you mean by has been said, yeah. It's everything all at once, yeah.
Hands and outside of time. Things used to acquire signs of age, veneers that tucked them appropriately into their place in time. Now, they're automatically updated to always look like now. Digital spaces are so packed with timeless messages between bygone people that we don't even ask, is anyone here? Anymore. Instead, we ask, is anyone now? In order to adapt to all of this, we have to consume information that we don't even ask, is anyone here? Anymore. Instead, we ask, is anyone now?
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
Now?
Oh, fuck.
In order to adapt to all of this, we have to consume information in an increasingly dehumanized, decontextualized, and decentralized way. Each next bit is often unrelated to the last. Our participation is not acknowledged or assumed, and it's all fed to us by machines we don't know and didn't build that only put it in our eyes and ears. The sheer weight of all of this accreting information and its growing accessibility is awe-inspiring. It may even be our purpose. I mean, what else produces such detailed records? Purposefully or not, we record, save, collect, organize, and preserve events like nothing else.
Damn, I
in the universe.
never thought
I've said
about it like
before
that.
If humans were to go extinct, the sun would still shine, the universe would keep expanding, Jupiter would continue being gassy, but the universe would lose its best autobiographer. But the technologies of this project have yet to address our bodies. Enter the TV paradox. Remember the short, long, and long...
It's just... Brother. I have to say again, whoever posted this on Reddit, I mean, it's my fault for watching it this time of night, but Jesus Christ. I'm never going to be able to make a video like this. That's okay, this isn't my skill set. I have a different skill set. It isn't this. That's okay. But my God. Time is such a mindfuck. I'm so pissed I'll never know what Earth will look like in 1,000 years. Yeah, I get that. I think I've come to terms over the years with not worrying too much about that myself now, but I definitely used to feel like that before. I don't know. I think it's maybe when you have kids. I only really care about their lifetime, the expansion, the sort of scale of their own lives, rather than 1,000 years. It's weird. When you have kids, all of this changes. All of this perception changes. Everything changes so much. It's to the point where it's actually difficult for me to relate in real life now, having had kids for so long. Like I said, I've been a parent for 13 years, so think about that. My existence on this earth for well over a decade has been as a parent. And so now at this point, because I've got friends who don't have kids, and we've been friends, and the distance between them having this one path which I was on before, and then me here is now having kids. We're now here and here, so we still get on. We're still friends, but it's very difficult to relate. At first, when you got young kids and you remember your past life, and when you could do whatever you want, go see a film, whatever it was. But now it's so far over here now. There's somebody who's still not got kids at my age. It's very difficult to relate to them. Very difficult. That's why I'm scared of having kids. Yeah, don't be. It couldn't be more normal, but yeah, I mean, it is scary, definitely. There was this TV
but
paradox.
The technologies of this project have yet to address our bodies. Enter the TV paradox. Remember the short, long, and long, short patterns of time?
Yeah.
Well, a new pattern has been emerging and growing in frequency. Short, short. It was first observed in people watching TV alone. They reported feeling like time flew by quickly. Oh, wow, have I really been watching for 4 hours?
Oh, we know this.
But later, they didn't remember their TV session as a major moment of significant import or duration. They didn't attend to the passing of time during it. They didn't feel bored or like time dragged, but they also didn't accumulate a lot of new, significant, memory-worthy experiences.
That's interesting.
Rapid, stimulating
Because
streams...
fucking doing that is 100% that. Whereas watching a really strong piece of TV, like an amazing TV show, you know, an amazing movie, obviously, I feel like that has an emotional impact on you. So that's interesting. That's probably quite an old study, but yeah, I mean, I remember the feeling of watching Karate Kid 3 in a cinema in the 80s and the advert that they ran before it for a local karate club, and how much I wanted to then go and do karate. I think I was 6, actually, not 7. And I can even remember it probably didn't look like that, but I have a memory of what that advert before the movie looked like, and the people in their white gis doing karate. And then we watched Karate Kid 3, and then, yeah, we found the karate club, and I joined the karate club. I can remember all of that so well. But yeah, on the short form thing, fucking bad, man. The classic, what was the TikTok you saw 3 TikToks ago? Damn. That's a crazy one. Yeah, sort of in the moment especially, right? Scary shit. Definitely scary shit. I can remember individual Can I? I can. It's more people that I remember. But there's a whole nother conversation to be had about short form content. There's many conversations to be had about short form content. That's for another time. No way they're promoting local sports fighting in cinemas nowadays. Yeah, I know. Just as I was saying it then, so yeah, that's kind of weird, right? That it was like a local advert for a fucking karate club. But 80s, man. I'll definitely talk about the 80s more and more and more on these streams and in these videos because it's fucking wild. And I know you guys, most of you, almost all of you who watch me, weren't alive then. You're all, either between sort of 10 and 20 years younger than me.
A fullness that makes time fly by. But fractured, desensualized, one-way experiences feel unconnected to ourselves and our larger life histories. Retrospectively,
no wonder we
they
feel
don't
so
fill up a lot of
disconnected.
space. They burn our time on both ends. It feels shorter during and after. Interestingly, short has not been found when people engage with content they have connections with. For example,
Right, yes.
things they own memorabilia of, made friendships through, attended conventions about. So the pace of life may be taking your life from you, but standing could give you your life back. In the future, we will surely find other ways to overcome the negative side effects of the faster experiences we crave. The development of digital media that engage the other senses, more linked as they are with long-term memory, or that build contexts for us could help. So could
Interesting.
surgical solutions, like removing the parts of the brain that make us not like doom scrolling. Probably first, any anxieties will be recognized as a condition treatable with medication. Now, this is all to say that we live in a transitional period. The conquest of space made the world smaller, and now the conquest of time has made our lives smaller. We live after the conquering of time, but before its resurrection. In the meantime, make some time for time to control you. Be bored, miss out, fall
100%.
behind, feel time passing.
100%.
Lose track of time while
100%.
experiencing only what your body can alone. You might not have the time of your life, but you'll have more time of your life. I'll see you next time.
Brother,
And as always, thanks for watching.
I mean, that was just an unbelievable video. What an absolute motherfucker. He's doing
For
a
all
sponsor read. Out of respect, we showed a sponsor read, of course.
A great way to engage all of your senses is a subscription to our Curiosity Box, a seasonal delivery of viral physics toys, puzzles, books, games, all curated and cooked up by us. Our winter box comes with a kinetic torus knot, a device for creating electricity out of produce, try bananas, and lots more. Our mission at the Curiosity Box is to be good for all brains. So we donate a portion of all proceeds to Alzheimer's research and our Inquisitive Fellowship, which just gives money and resources to educational creators so they can make the kinds of videos they want to make. Do your brain a favor and sign up today. I'm really proud of it and I appreciate all of your support. And as always, thanks for watching.
What an absolute fucking mensch. What an absolute G.
There is a famous story about
Not
Einstein.
now, brother. Not now. Not watching a 4-hour Lex Fridman podcast. I need to go to bed. Yeah, that was Vsauce. I'm sure, as everybody in the chat is aware of the chat, but just in case you're not, I will link the video in case you want to subscribe. Is he still making shit? He hasn't made a video for a year, but then again, he doesn't make huge amounts of videos per year. I'm not surprised because Jesus. Yeah, fucking incredible video. Absolutely spun me out. And what was really interesting is this stuff that I've been thinking about a lot. Generally. A lot. Yeah, I think about that stuff all of the fucking time.